So, sermon part two. Some takeout from last Sunday. We were talking about the problem of busyness, how to get from busy to still. And we looked at some places in Scripture, particularly with King Hezekiah, where he seemed to have that nailed down. And then, of course, that would be in 2 Kings, chapter 18 and 19, and then we went into Psalm 46. But I said I wanted to talk some more specifics about what does that mean for me. So let's do that today. First, what does the problem of busyness look like? I think we all know what it is like when our schedule is just too full, and it seems like there are 16 things to be done every day and only time for 10 of them. But what are some other, maybe more subtle signs that you're too busy, that it's time to seek some stillness with the Lord? One that I've noticed is when I do finally take a break, I get sick or ill, not just physically, but even mentally. I emotionally, the bottom just drops out of me. And if I find that that's happening consistently over and over again in unhealthy ways, then for me, I found it's usually a sign that I'm too busy. Another sign is what I call restless body syndrome. Some of you have heard of restless leg syndrome. Your legs can't stop moving when you're trying to fall asleep. I think restless body syndrome is you finally get a chance to take a break, but you can't. Your body's just on the go. You can't seem to slow down. You can't take the time to just sit and be still. There's no rhythm of rest and recuperation in your life, and your body knows it. A third symptom to me is just an anxious feeling that doesn't go away. You feel like you ought to be busy, like you ought to be rushing to the next thing, even when there's no reason to be rushing. Have you ever caught yourself doing that? You're scrambling to get out to the door, and you look at your watch and you realize, I've got plenty of time to get where I'm going. Why am I in a rush? This one sticks with people. I recall a lady at our last church who ended up actually breaking a couple ribs in her late 80s, trying to put on her shoe without taking the extra 10 seconds to sit down at the chair that was right beside her and just put it on like a sane person. John Ortberg puts it this way. He says, have you noticed you have times in your week where you don't even have time to eat? And as pastors, we fall into it a lot. I've got to get to this next ministry thing, or I've got to go help this other person. And Ortberg points out, what are we thinking? Think we're going to get to heaven and God's going to say, oh, you didn't take time to eat. Good for you. No, we're not that busy. I think another telltale sign is we start to put our identity in our job or the roles that we play instead of who God has made us to be. Again, an easy one for pastors to identify myself as pastor and not as Tyler. And a final one that I think maybe most closely signifies the true danger of becoming busy is that we start missing the important stuff. We've got so much loaded on our plate that really critical things start falling off. And you see this classically in a lot of movies where parents are too busy. They miss the kid's ball game or important dance recital, things like that. It's easy to cram our schedule so full that we can no longer tell what's really critical for us to be at and be a part of. And I think that's the real threat of busyness. It erodes our ability to tell what is significant in our lives. But as we spoke on Sunday, there's not just the problem of busyness. We can transition to stillness because we know that God has provided stillness for us. That the natural state of our soul is not to be harried and chased through life, but to be still before Him. Maybe that's just a pause throughout your day. Maybe that's a longer extended period, as we talked on Sunday. We want to be still and see what God has done and to know his goodness. If you have time, go to Hebrews chapter 12 and look up verses 18 to 29. The author of Hebrews gives an interesting contrast between the Old Covenant and the New Covenant, and particularly what the emotional effect of our New Covenant should mean for us. That we aren't a harried and chaste people. We aren't people who have to quake in fear before the Lord. That we are accepted, we are loved, and we are part of his gospel community. So we have, having looked at the problem of our busyness and realized that God has provided stillness for us, then we need to practice that stillness as well. And so I talked a bit about that with the rabbit, that we need to start building habits, building practices that allow us to enjoy being still before God. Maybe it's a few minutes at the end of our day to reflect on what has happened, how it's made us feel, where we've seen God at work, and maybe talk to him about that. Maybe you need an extended period, and God provides that as well, something he calls a Sabbath. And I'm going to be talking about that for the next 3 weeks, actually. This practice of celebrating God, of taking a day of rest, not just to, let ourselves all hang out, but to renew ourselves before him. But most importantly, just to stop. Just to stop. I want to live a life that shows my identity in Jesus Christ and my recognition of what he has done. And stillness is an important factor of that. Jesus has accomplished for me what I never could. So that means I can take a rest. I can sit still and just appreciate the good things that he has given me. I hope this reminder is helpful for you guys. Hope you have a blessed week.